Hi, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Sarah from DD Geopolitics. Lots of things to talk about. Let's talk. Uh-oh. I don't know what happened to Sarah. There we go. I was about to say, oh no, she's gone. Not pissed. The CIA's, they're busy people here.
They're on us.
DD Geopolitics. You know, I've been hanging out around long enough to remember Donbass Devushka. Yes, I remember that. Most people are like, DD Geopolitics, what's that? I remember where that came from. I remember reading these articles. Oh my gosh, she's a Russian bot or something like
Russian bot.
Yes. As were we all. You know, you're really in this country, unless you're an anti-Semite, an anti-vaxxer, a Russian Putin puppet, that need anything else, a crazy conspiracy theorist, and unless somebody calls you all of those or some combination of them, you're really not. You're just probably an agent for the system.
Yeah, you're more look at who hates you rather than who likes you. I want to make sure the right people hate me.
That's right. I should get a T-shirt with all of those names. You know what I mean? Or just a hat for each one. Today I'm a conspiracy theorist, and tomorrow I'm a Putin puppet.
Different hats. That would be great.
Exactly. All right, let's go. Because everybody always asks me about my Biden bombed the Nord Stream hat that I love to wear. That's my favorite one. You could probably make $1 million selling that darn hat if I did.
That is
constantly people are like,
Biden
bombed Nord Stream. Okay, let's get to it. Number one. We'll hit the latest news. This is hilarious. I mean, nothing's hilarious about war.
Well, it is, but it's not. Yes.
Okay. Washington will immediately halt all airstrikes on Yemen, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday. The U.S. president said the Houthi group has told Washington it did not want to fight anymore. We will honor that. We will stop the bombings. They have capitulated. I find that slightly hard to believe. I'm more like think that no matter what, here are people that literally, if you look into it, basically what they'll say is, our former leader who's died, a while back, gave a sermon, shall I say, and gave us a prophecy that one day we would be blessed to fight the U.S. empire in Israel. And I'm supposed to believe that they just woke up one day and capitulated to Trump. I kind of think Trump made this up. I kind of think MQ-9 Reapers fell all over the place. F-18s mysteriously slipped off the side of a ship when they just happened to be making, turning around. I think they were going back for popcorn and soda or something like that. And they were making a turn and, hey, it happens every now and then. A $60 million fighter plane slips off. And I think Trump said, they said, what do you want to do, Trump? And he said, the Houthis have capitulated. That's it. The Houthis have capitulated. Let's declare victory and go home. That's my thought. What do you think?
Well, it's pretty amazing since the Houthis, Ansarallah, have claimed since the beginning that they won't capitulate, and the only way they'll stop is if the genocide stops in Gaza. So I'm not sure why they would capitulate now. Maybe he just thought because of the airport bombing that he would be able to sell this. I'm not sure, but I guess the good news, or maybe the bad news, however you look at it, they've Mohammed al-Bukhari already came out and said, he's the Ansarallah spokesperson, said that those words have no basis in reality.
But that's in a way, you got to laugh about it. That's the great thing about Trump, right? For instance, Joe Biden, those guys will be like, yes, we're working nonstop for a ceasefire. And they'll do that for like 9 months. And then the Israelis will come out and say, they never really asked us once for a ceasefire. Right. So the Biden team will look serious and they'll have the media on their side. And there'll be some great big operation to, tell their lies. Trump, he just comes out and says, I talked to the Chinese the other day, and the Chinese like, oh, we didn't talk to him. He's like, yeah, I did.
I it's like, do you think, I had to ask you, do you think that he just says things, or do you think that there's some mental degradation going on a la Joe Biden? Like today, for instance, when he's being asked about Sorry if you hear any toys. Just got a puppy, and I'm just trying to keep her from being awful. But she's playing with a toy. But today, when he was asked about the bombing of Yemen, he did say they capitulated, and then he was asked for more details as a follow-up, and he said, "They've said, please don't bomb us." And they said, "Well, where did you hear that from?" And he said, "It doesn't matter where I heard it.
Yeah.
A very good source."
Yeah.
What? Trust me, bro.
Me, yeah. Well, see, but here's the thing about that, and that is when Trump does that, because here's what happens. Because I always, I was a Democrat, right?
Mhm.
Up until the whole Bernie thing, and then I left, and now I hate both parties, right?
Yes.
Became an independent. Okay, here's my point. The arrogance of the Democrats when they point out that Trump lies, and I'm like, yeah, okay, a politician that lies. Who would ever imagine such a thing,
Shock.
right? But I'm like, I can't even begin to point to the lies of Tony Blinken. Pretty much every word that came out of his mouth was a lie. Joe Biden. So these people, and Sullivan and these people, lied nonstop, but they looked professional when they lied. And they had this look on their face, and they had the whole system behind them. The whole system said it's all true. And you're like, well, that's not true. Yes, Putin woke up one morning absolutely unprovoked, totally and completely unprovoked, because he wanted to broaden out and restart the Soviet Union. They make up stuff that's absurd, but they're much more serious when they lie, and it's a bigger lie, and they have a whole system supporting these lies, but it's still a damn lie. So realistically, oftentimes, if you were to gauge the size of a lie, right? A lie that could get us all nuked versus a lie that just says, yeah, the Houthis said they gave up, and the Houthis didn't give up. I tell you the truth, since they're both lies, give me the lie that says the Houthis said they gave up over the one that's going to get us all fried in a nuclear Armageddon.
100% agree, and at least it's more entertaining. I feel like at this point he knows it's entertaining. So, but yeah, I agree. There's obviously a more like safety-ish thing that you referenced here. It's not as coordinated. It's not as practiced. It's sort of like this off the cuff, just sort of businessman-esque jargon and exaggeration. So yeah, it's obviously not as dangerous as Biden's or as involved and convoluted, but it's still, I mean, it's just, I think it provides endless entertainment. I don't know if people find it funny. I'm sorry, but it's like a have to laugh so I don't cry thing or worry, but I do find him consistently entertaining. Consistently.
If you're going to deal with the empire, at least you get a couple sniggles out of Trump every now and then.
He's
Either way,
funny.
you're dealing with imperialism, but you get a couple sniggles out of this guy every now and then. Even if you have to, half the time, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the horrors that are being done in my name. But at least every now and then I get a chuckle. And here's what I think. I think that, and let me be honest about this. Biden and those people would have never stopped bombing Yemen. Biden and Blinken would have never stopped bombing Yemen. Trump is not a part of the system. So Trump may wake up on a given day and say, what the hell are we doing this for? What's going on? Tell me about it. Well, we're bombing them. Are they going to stop? Nah, they probably going to stop. Oh, crap. What's going on? Well, we're losing MQ-9 Reapers. They're dropping out of the sky like sparrows, right? And, we're losing, this is the second F-18. We're firing missiles at drones that cost like $20. I think they bought them from, they bought these, they're like buying drones on Amazon for $100, and we're spending a $2 million missile to shoot them down. And I think Trump just got like, what the hell are we, what? I'll just make something up. So whereas he doesn't give a crap. Whereas the Biden people, to me, they would see this as like their stance as the leader of the free world. It would be challenged, so they can't possibly stop. They must smite the Houthis or whatever the hell they think, right? We must smite the Houthis. We will never let them challenge our authority. Where Trump would just be like, we're losing too much. This is, how transactional he is. How much is it costing us? Yeah, about $1 billion a week. How much are the Houthis spending? About $100. Get us the hell out of here. You know what I mean? That's the way I see Trump.
I mean, yes and no, but they haven't stopped bombing. They bombed again today, while like the Canadian newly elected prime minister was in the United States. So they bombed again after. I don't know if it's just remnants or hadn't gone into effect yet, or what the plan even is. But
or if he was even telling the truth.
at
For all we
all,
know, he might just say,
We
we're
are-
not bombing them anymore, and just keep bombing them.
Yes.
Who knows?
we really don't. But I guess at least we're not on the brink of nuclear destruction, like under
Not today.
Biden. Not today.
Yeah. And I'll put it like this. Let me ask you this about the Iran thing. There are a lot of people saying we're going to war with Iran, we're going to attack Iran, we're going to attack Iran. Here's my opinion. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I don't believe it's going to happen.
No.
I think Trump is a guy who, he's easily distracted. Yeah, he's, one day he's, yes, this is great. One day I think we got a deal. The next day, True Social, they better do what I say, or or I'll bomb them the next day. Well, I think we're getting closer. That's what you get with Trump. But I just don't think he wants to pull the trigger on a major war. I don't think he wants, he doesn't want a big screw up. And I think he's like, it could be a big screw up. I don't think he'll pull the trigger on a major war.
No. I 100% agree. Probably while you were at the mechanic, I don't know if you saw or not, but the Iran talks are back on. I think that he really, 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 really wants to go with diplomacy here. He really wants to avoid any sort of direct confrontation with Iran. 100%. It makes the Israelis seethe, but so be it. They're just going to have to seethe. Yeah, I agree 100%.
I remember reading that Hegseth was at one point against it. Like a lot of people get freaked out over tweets now. The one thing that Trump brought in his first campaign is the tweet politics, right? That he tweets this out and then everybody reads it and they just freak out and they go bananas over whatever the latest tweet is, right? And he'll do a 180 on tweets, constantly, right? But so Hegseth, one of his drunken stupors tweets something like, Iran will be held accountable or whatever the hell, right? But apparently, according to reports, he was kind of against it. And here's what I think. I think the Pentagon, whether they're for or against it, I think they told him the truth. Look, man, we can't stop one stinking Houthi missile. I mean, we got all of this and one missile. They fire one missile, goes through all of our air defenses, plop right down in the middle of Ben Gurion Airport. I think Iran has more than one missile. So I'm just saying, if we go against Iran, they got more than one missile, if you get the picture. And I think Trump and Hegseth are like, if we go against Iran, we could talk a lot of trash, but it ain't going to work out well for us. And it could work out really bad. And Trump, here's the thing. He doesn't want to be the guy that attacked Iran and got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be that guy.
There's a huge risk of that, of getting in my opinion, the type of assault that would be necessary to subdue the Iranian government is not the type of assault that America is equipped or prepared to get into, and not at this time at all. It would require a ground invasion, and we're not in the shape for that. So that has to be completely off the table.
Yeah, well, it would drag us into another conflict. But this time, it's not the Houthis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think okay, you've been attacking Iraq, who's, they had 1950s Soviet stuff. They
right. This isn't that.
Right. Libya, a little teeny country with, a couple million people. Okay. So you've been attacking these small popcorn sized countries, right? This ain't that. This is a major regional power, and you're going to do an expeditionary conflict where you're going to the halfway across the world to fight a regional power on its own turf. The odds of you winning that are not really good. You know what I mean? They ain't going nowhere. They've been there for thousands of years. I know they're not going anywhere. And they can just sit there and they can just lob missiles at you all day and all night. And they ain't going nowhere for thousands of years. Now you get dragged into this war. You're getting hurt. It's not fun. How do you get out of it without putting up a white flag? I think Trump realizes that enough to say, I can call Ukraine Biden's war, even though now he's kind of taking ownership for it. I can call it that. But if I attack Iran, I can't blame nobody. And that's going to go bad. And I do not believe he will pull the trigger.
Yeah, he is somebody who's very concerned with legacy in that sense. And he wants to stick to the word of no new wars. So he's okay with kind of continuing the current ones in their state, or maybe even escalating them a bit, but not commencing anything. I mean, even on the topic of China, that subject has never even been broached, even though like people were hinting at, we're prepared to go to war with China. And even then, I believe it was Witkoff, it might have been Besant that said it. I'm not positive, but they said we just want to restructure their economy. So they don't want to go to war with these people. They want to get their economic sort of victories. And I think with Iran, they're going to be able to get that because Iran's economically in a bit of dire straits. So they do prefer diplomacy.
Yeah, we'll be economically in a bit of dire straits along with them soon because
Right.
the way things are going. But here's the other part of it, though. A person who's been poor for a long time can live with being poor, right? They've been dealing with it. Actually, now that China's buying more, they economically things may not be good, but now that China's buying more oil, they're actually far better off than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Far better off than they were 10 years. So their standards of living, though it hasn't gotten anywhere where it should be, has actually improved. So, and with what's happening with BRICS, and with their interactions with Russia, they got a new big brother and sister, or two big brothers, a dragon and a bear. You know what I mean? The future is bright for Iran. If I'm Iran, I don't want a war because things are going in the right direction. And I know, I can see I'm getting integrated into this new world system. Things are looking well for me. So Iran doesn't want a war. Trump's problem is the same problem he has in Ukraine and everywhere else. His problem with getting a deal is inside the Beltway. You know what I mean? Trump wants to get the hell out of Ukraine. Now he don't know how to do it, but he wants out. I believe if it was up to Trump, he'd just say, yeah, we're out of here. But his wars are with the neocons inside the Beltway and extended with the European lunatics.
100%, especially the technocrats. I don't think the neocons still have a bit of power, but it's the technocrats and the tech bros that are really pushing Trump and ruddering this ship. So yes, I 100% agree. He sees no benefit in being in Ukraine. Even if you look through Trump's business ties, even the shady stuff, none of it's in Ukraine. He doesn't want to be in there. It's not lucrative for him. He wants to get out. He just doesn't see it as beneficial. He doesn't understand it as well. You can tell that he doesn't really understand the war from the perspective of the combatants. And that's another reason probably why he's like just done with it, just exhausted by the whole thing, which is good. That's a positive thing. It's the tech bros. So if you look at recently, a lot of publications made a big deal about it and said Trump signed a $50 million deal with Ukraine. They're arming Ukraine again. Sure, that's not really what it was. It was opening up a door for the privatization. So it's the tech bros that wanted that deal, not Trump. So yes, I do agree to an extent that a lot of it's Beltway BS, and a lot of it's this new up and coming class of oligarchic tech bros that have a lot of power. They gave over like 400 million to Trump. So
yeah, exactly. And the struggle as the empire deteriorates. The empire's biggest fight is inside, and like we've got factions, we've got the financial capital, the Wall Streets, the military industrial complex is part of that financialized, but the financialized capital people, right? Whereas Trump is more the industrial capital people. I had a great guest that was talking about that the other day, wherein when they look at Russia, they're like, well, from an industry, nothing could be better. They got all the resources. If you want an industry, you can make a deal with them. You can do mining and you can get more resources. You can build factories. You can do all of this industry. The industrial capitalists look at Russia as a great ally, as a great opportunity that can make they're looking at like China, industrial capitalists. Russia's great. Yeah. And Russia's like, China's great. You need what we got. We got what you need. Let's do this. Yep. Whereas the financialized capitalist people, to me, they see Russia is something they want to take over. Why? Because if I'm a financialized person, why do I want an oil field? It's an asset. I can now take out loans against it. I can now put things against that capital. It's just an asset that I have that I can take out loans against it. I can sell portions of investment into it. I don't care about the oil in there. It is It is a tool that I can use to sell or borrow against this particular thing. So they want to own all of Russia's commodities, so they
Yes.
can borrow and sell against the commodities, which means they got to own all of it. Or anything Russia has, they want to borrow and sell against it, which means they got to own all of it. The industry doesn't need to own it. They just need to get a deal so they can get a good price on it, because they need to use the stuff rather than borrow and sell. And I think so. What we're seeing is this fight amongst the factions of capitalism, the capitalist factions saying, hey, I want to borrow and you know what I'm saying, what I'm getting at. And so that's the war Trump has inside. Who's going to win? I don't know. I think they're all going to lose in one shape or another, because I think the Russians are like, hey, what about us? You guys are fighting over our stuff. I think we get the last say. And oh, by the way, we got nukes, so you ain't taking it.
That, and Trump's business really still lies tremendously and majority in real estate. That's what he's interested in. He's interested in tangible assets. If you look at the recent tour that his sons went on, it was all crypto and real estate. Well, the crypto goes through the real estate and whatnot and what have you. But yes, it's very much so. So you're 100% right. He doesn't really wheel and deal in commodities and futures and stuff like that. He is a real estate guy. So yes, and he is in somewhat of a tug of war with the old guard neocons. As you might have seen this week, John Bolton did an interview and kind of criticized the people that are in the administration, saying they're idiots. They don't know anything about Russia, Ukraine. They don't know anything about Iran. They don't know anything about, he was talking about Witkoff specifically. And and Stephen Miller's rearing his ugly head again. So, bald head, maybe not ugly, but and so this kind of old guard neocon-esque people are still waiting in the wings, and they still hold a lot of power. So we have to see how this kind of wins out. Does it go with tech bro capital, or does it go with neocon, sort of the way it's been for 30, 40 years?
Well, I think there is a unholy alliance between the pure neocons and the financialized capital people, right? And let me tell you why. Because the pure neocons go with the what's the guy's name? The Wolfowitz doctrine. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Whereas, Paul Wolfowitz in the 2001, the infamous doctrine was basically the U.S. is the regional commander of the world. I mean, the commander of the world, and everybody has to do what we say, and no country can be, or no entity in the world can be allowed to get powerful enough to challenge us. So the pure ideological neocons are just like really fascist warmongers that say we must rule the world, we must rule the landscape, we must control all the countries, everyone must bend to our knee. And to them, it's not as much about money as it is about just pure raw power and controlling the world. That's the John Bolton faction, wherein their alignment with financialized capital is this. Was it Friedman who said you can't have McDonald's without McDonnell Douglas, right?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Yes, it is. We use the military, or what's the guy's name that wrote War is a Racket? Smedley Butler, where basically that discussion was the military is used to go out and overthrow countries. Intelligence, they're used to take over countries so that Wall Street and all the power brokers can come in and make money off of those countries. So that unholy alliance between the pure warmonger fascists and Wall Street and the finance capital has always been there.
Yeah. And it's getting broader, especially with the more the darker of the sort of like your Palantir. They're very much intertwined with your Stephen Miller types and Marco Rubio types. So yes, they're starting to get intertwined with the old class neocons. We have this sort of intermediate class of neocon-ish war hawky fascist. I don't hesitate to call Stephen Miller a fascist. I don't know enough about him yet, but at least he's at least a nationalist at minimum. But that is sort of like this intermediary class of diplomats. And then we have them bridging over to the tech bro sector. I mean, they all wine and dine together. They're opening a new club. It was announced, I think, yesterday, maybe the day before. They're opening a club downtown in Georgetown, $500,000 a year. And it's for people that want to kind of schmooze and booze with Trump. And so it's for all those guys to kind of get together and determine policy.
Oh, I think I'll join. The only thing I need is another
There you
$500,000. If
go.
somebody donates that in the
Get
super
the
chat, I'm in.
GoFundMe.
How about that? Yeah, there we go. I want to hang out with the power brokers. But at any rate, what was I going to say? Uh, I think let me ask you this. Let me get this from you. Donbass Devushka. What are your thoughts on this whole? I want to get your thoughts broadly on the whole concept of the Trump team, Witkoff going back and forth, trying to get a deal, but then there's Kellogg, and they're throwing the old stupid, crazy neocon deal that the Russians will never accept, and coming back and pretending like the Russians might accept it, and then we do, then we don't. What are your thoughts about this whole so-called pushing for a deal, as all we ever see coming from the Trump administration is the same deal that the Russians keep saying no to? Well, maybe we'll try it again. This time they'll surely take it. Your thoughts on the whole deal fiasco?
Really incredible, and it really shows, and not obviously not putting this all on Trump's shoulders, but it obviously shows a lack of diplomatic knowledge on the part of the people organizing these talks. The goals of the SMO have never changed since the beginning. So what I don't understand, I'm not really understanding the miscommunication. Trump himself has said that Zelensky lost all his cards. Well, if there's no cards left to bargain with, then you need to bargain with what the SMO goals are. That's it. And then, they keep repeating themselves over and over again. I'm sure they're exhausted. And I believe it was last week, Thursday, maybe, where they announced we're no longer even mediating the talks anymore. We're done. We're done with it. I believe she said, we're no longer going to fly across the world at the drop of a hat to negotiate. Nobody asked you to do this. Nobody asked for this. So, plus they got their mineral deal and their arms deal. So there's really nothing left to negotiate. An interesting thing, when my admin that lives in Russia, she wrote a short piece about how, from a Russian perspective, she thinks that the Russians are just using these peace talks just to make us look stupid. And we did look stupid for a minute, but we're out of the peace talks now. There will be no more peace talks. Well, we will not mediate peace talks between Ukraine and Russia anymore.
Well, I think this from the Russians' perspective. Look, the Russians are very, very good at diplomacy and international diplomacy, and they understand that it is important that the United States and Russia maintain an open dialogue, right? So, from the perspective of the Russians, the safe thing for the world, the best thing is that they maintain a running dialogue. So, even though I know I can't get a deal with you, if it's in my best interest to keep talking, what the hell? Come on over. We'll have coffee. We'll chat. We'll talk about the deal that we can't get, and then we'll go on about our business. And we'll get together again next week and talk about the deal that we can't get.
Sure.
From the Russians' perspective, it only benefits them because they get to open, and maybe every now and then they can squeeze a little something out of them. You know what I mean? They can get some information about what's going on. They can pass something to the Americans. Hey, we got a problem here, blah, blah, blah. So I think from the Russians' perspective, it's only a win for them to continue to talk with the Americans, because they couldn't talk with them before. And they probably don't want a deal because, let's face it. Well, no, let me just put it differently. They know what they're dealing with. You look at, these guys goose stepping around Kiev, sieg heiling each other with a friggin' mind. All of them have an old copy of Mein Kampf in their backpack. You're not getting a deal with these people, and the Russians know who they're dealing with. But what the hell? I guess they're like, if the Americans want to amuse themselves and think that they even have some input in these lunatics, which they don't, well, why not? Why not continue to humor them? It's only a win for the Russians.
Yeah, it keeps the door open. It keeps them on good footing with the Americans. So they don't need to just talk about Ukraine and Russia. There's plenty of other things that Russians could find useful to talk to the Americans about. And it's good to keep those doors of diplomacy open. It also helps you get to know what you're working with here. But I think the Russians have been clear more than once that it feels reminiscent of Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, and they're not going to jump into anything. Because they've said that our leadership changes too quickly, and we don't know what we'll be dealing with in 4 or 5 years. And that's fair. That's a fair assessment. And I think that the same kind of goes for Iran in a sense with the JCPOA. I mean, we had a plan in place, you ripped it up, and now you want to replace it with pretty much the same plan. And and Russia's not going to get fooled again.
And I think Iran and Russia's probably, if they were honest, this is what they'd say to Trump. Trump, I know you want a deal. and you could probably write up a deal that we'd take, but you can't get it past those lunatics
Right.
around you. You know what I mean? We know you want to deal, we want to deal, and you really don't care about this crap, but
Yeah.
you can't get it past your inner circle and the neocons that are pushing you. So let's just keep doing this dance and see how it works out. Additionally, here's a great thing too, I think, for the Russians. They have been able to some extent to rehabilitate their image. You know what I mean? For instance, Lavrov brings in, Larry Johnson, Judge Napolitano. He brings in these alternative media people and he talks to them, and everybody's like, well, that was interesting. And we get to hear about that. Well, we want to hear that, right? Meanwhile, so what happens? CBS, they're like, darn it, we're screwed. The alternative media people are getting Lavrov. Well, I guess we got to call Lavrov. So they call him, and Lavrov's like,
Yeah.
sure.
What a
Then
good
he
interview.
gets to go on there and go on CBS, and he gets to show, look, you guys pretend like we're some kind of monsters or something with the Russians. Let's talk. I'm open. Ask me a question. I'll give you an answer. And Lavrov is so sharp. I love that guy. And he has that Russian sense of humor, that dry Russian sense of humor. Him and Maria Zakharova. I love, and Medvedev. You got to love these guys, these people's sense of humor. It's dry. It's hilarious. But so he gets to go on US television. They get to rehabilitate their image a little bit. They get to get their message across to the American people and the people in the West. I just think the whole thing has been a major win for the Russians, and I think they'll continue doing this.
I agree. That you brought up a really good point about that interview with the alternative media, and then they kind of opening the door, or sort of holding the mainstream media's feet to the fire. That was a great interview. If your listeners haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's a good interview, and he cracks on her a lot. But that's a really, really good point. And the Russians are smart enough to use that to their advantage. Plus, they don't act crazy anyway. So I mean, they had nothing to lose by just going on CBS and answering questions like they do every day with the BBC and RT and TOS. So I agree. It's actually a net positive for Russia.
I think a powerful thing that was said was, because the American people, or the people in the West, were fed so much propaganda. When they asked him about the tariffs, and the interviewer said basically, well, I'm going to paraphrase. Hey, basically, you said that you don't care, you don't want the tariffs lifted, and and in his own humorous way, he pretty much said to her, well, this is like the first time you've actually quoted me correctly. You know what I mean? He's like, well, you finally told the truth about something that I said. Yeah. She's like, so you don't want the tariffs lifted? He's like, hey, you quoted what I said, and it was like something that, like, Americans are always told, oh my gosh, these tariffs, the Russians hate them. If we just give them tariffs, they'll give everything up, right? And the message was clear. We're doing pretty good to these darn tariffs. And that's one part of them. If you want to lift them, great. If you don't, we're not so thrilled with having you schmucks, come back in here anyway. We're doing fine.
Right. And and fact of the matter is that they've got the United States, this administration, painted into a corner that they really can't sanction them anymore. If they do, it will look really bad at this point. So, I mean, we've survived this long with all the sanctions, and we've actually adapted pretty well. Why would we care if you lift them or not? Same thing with the, we'll recognize Crimea. Russia was like, oh, okay. Like, welcome to the party. Like, what do we care if you recognize Crimea? That interview was great. I think she asked him another question about what Trump said, and he said, why are you asking me? You don't believe your president?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good bridge, good cultural exchange, if you will. No, I'm not Canadian. I don't know why people are asking if I'm Canadian.
They think everybody's Canadian for some reason. They used to say that, although this has changed, they used to say that Canada, living in Canadians used to say this to me. I used to love Toronto, go up to Toronto, and they say, yeah, living in Toronto, being up here is like being living in a really nice apartment over top of a meth lab.
Yeah, well, now look.
Yeah, now it's a totalitarian. Well, it's part of Europe. Canada
It really
to me has
is.
always been European. It's a European country, and really Europe has gone totalitarian. So if you're European, you're just part of a big totalitarian state, really. May 9th, a big day.
Big day
for all of us. And I understand they've announced all the people, and I'm looking, there's all these African leaders that are going to, and meanwhile, Zelensky's like, darn it, I'll attack you on May 9th and kill everybody. He sounded like a madman. Your thoughts on Zelensky and the whole May 9th Ben Hodges, you know who that is?
Yeah.
Ben Hodges said, yes, he said May 9th is a date they should target, and that Zelensky should rain fire on May 9th.
Medvedev said, you wanted security guarantees in the mineral deal? Well, if you bomb us on the 9th, then there's no guarantees Kiev will exist on the 10th. That's a quote. So, yeah, I think he has to do this stuff, this sort of pomp and circumstance, this sort of big talk. Plus, he has no control over his armed forces. So if something does happen, he has to look like at least he was in the know and he was in control of it. But he has no control over these people. They're bombing whatever they can. Drones are flying every day into the civilian settlements on the borders and Moscow on a frequent basis. So he has no control over these people. Interestingly enough, the polls came out today, and Solushny is polling way ahead of Zelensky. So we may see, a little change of command coming up. Trump already said that he wasn't going to be long for that office if he didn't start playing ball correctly. That was like a month ago or so. So who knows? If they do something stupid on May 9th, it will be the biggest mistake that they've made, because I think that will cause a lot of the deals between Ukraine and the United States to have to collapse in good faith.
Well, a couple of things. As I've argued all along that the Ukraine project is basically there are various entities that have various jobs, right? For instance, the French, with their history with the French Foreign Legion, their job is to run mercenaries in and out. The U.S., they're the muscle. They're the guerrillas. Their job is to provide the military heavy stuff for the punches. Europe, the UK, MI6, they're supposedly the brains. They're the ones that put the government together, that put the intelligence together, that supervise that. And I've made this argument. Zelensky is a creation of MI6. And you see what happens every time Trump slaps him, he runs to London. He's a creation of MI6, right? In fact, Scott Ritter did a little documentary called Agent Zelensky, where he talks about it, that he's a creation of MI6. Mm-hmm. So, and what did MI6 do when they looked in there like Zelensky's getting unstable? What did they do? They grabbed Zelensky,
and now he's over there.
What did they do?
He's
they
the ambassador.
Made him the ambassador to London. And they brought him to London to get him ready so that whenever they need to dispatch Zelensky, boom, Zelensky's right there. But he's not acceptable to the Russians either, because he's a diehard Banderite. But I mean, that's the country. They're diehard Banderites. But as you said, the reality is, as people talk about Zelensky getting a deal, signing a deal with someone, he has absolutely no authority of that country. If Zelensky signs a deal tomorrow that says effectively, immediately, well, I've got this and that and such and such, so we're going to stop immediately and we're going to take this deal, the Azov and all of these people would say, oh yeah, we're not listening. Get out of here with you. They probably kill him. They already told him they'd kill him.
They did.
So he'd have to leave the country, and the deal is worthless because he does not have, as we know, when you have a state, a monopoly on the use of violence is what makes a state a state. He does not have a monopoly on the use of violence.
Never did.
So that's not really a state. He's not in control.
Well, I mean, this war has been the British's war since it started. I mean, we don't need to. I mean, for the listeners, just it was Boris Johnson who stopped the first peace deal couple weeks into the war. So it's like, this has always been their war. And maybe it's sort of like we're giving them back for their participation in Iraq, sort of. So because we kind of we helped it along for sure, but we did get dragged in a little bit by the British, and we got put on the hook for this. And I think that's also the message Trump might be trying to convey a little bit. Like, it's Joe Biden's war. It's not our war. It's the Europeans. If I decouple from the Europeans, watch what happens. They're screwed. See, it's the Europeans' war, and he's proving a lot of points that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, and in a way, the other way I could see it is My faction of the ruling elite was never behind this anyway. This isn't ours. It's Joe Biden. It's those other guys over there. They don't like us. We don't really like them. We got a lot of problems with them. So it's not the problem he has is though, if I become the CEO of Coca-Cola tomorrow and someone is suing Coca-Cola for something they did 2 years ago, I can't say, well, I'm the CEO now. I wasn't there. I'm sorry. You assume liability for everything that happened. It may not be personal liability, but you run that company. You got to settle it. He took over the U.S. empire. And all to me, if you look at Trump, he's trying to pretend like, he tried to come in like we're going to do something different. He still has this mind of imperialism. He still has this mind of that we must dominate the world. He's just it's just a different version of it. And his problems are all the same. He don't have the cards. He doesn't have the horsepower. Iran, you better do this. You ain't got the horsepower to make them. Russia, you better take a deal. You don't have the horsepower to make them. China, do this and pay these tariffs. It's like, dude, I don't know if you've been paying attention to, keeping up with current events, but economically, we're doing pretty good. You don't have the economic horsepower to force us to do it. So what Trump's running into is his inability to grasp that even since he left 4 years ago, the military, diplomatic, and economic power of the U.S. empire has deteriorated significantly. It had deteriorated then. Now it's really gone downhill, and the Houthis are beating the hell out of you, and the whole world can see it.
Well, I mean, and honestly, we'll pat ourselves on the back because it's a lot of it's thanks to people like us during the Biden administration. The exposition of the lies and the background to that conflict blew a lot of things open. The Russians helped blow a lot of the lies open. The Nord Stream debacle, so it was 100%. In the last 4 years, it has degraded exponentially while it was already obviously in a free fall prior to that. But yeah, and do you think that Trump's surprised, or do you think that he's just kind of poking holes in certain places to see what's what? Because I don't know that he can be surprised if you say to Iran, we're gonna make you do this, and they're like, what are you gonna do? Sanction us? And then they're like, okay, well, if you're not gonna sanction us, you're gonna bomb us, and we're like, well, we can't really do that either. So it's like, or Russia, do you want your sanctions lifted? And they're like, we don't really care, and we're like, oh, well, why not? And do you think that Trump understands that we don't hold this sort of power anymore, or do you think that he's trying these things and wondering why it's not working?
I do think there's a combination of it's no single answer to it. I think that he's as his method of his modus operandi, right? His method of operation is that he bluffs a lot. So that's a big part of it. He bluffs like he's got this tremendous amount of power, even when he doesn't. That's a big, and I've known people like that, the guy on the street that talks a lot of crap. Like he's a tough guy and he can beat everybody. He can't. But that's his way of getting over and doing, the businessman that goes and talks a lot of stuff and his company doesn't have nearly the power that he represents. And there are businessmen that can get over like that and do pretty good. I think that's Trump's game, is to bluff that he has more power than he has. So he may, in fact, not realize how much the imperial power has deteriorated. But whether he does or not, he's still always going to bluff like he has maximum power. But again, Trump would take some deals. His problem is he's got people around him that will not accept the reality that the U.S. power has deteriorated. And so even if Trump says, let's take this deal, I think it's the best deal we're going to get, there are people around him that say, no, they must do what we tell them to do. The only deal we'll take is what we dictate to them, and they will take that deal or else. Problem is, when it comes to Trump, he's the one that's got to say, okay, then we're going to attack Iran. And here's what he probably does know. If it all goes to hell, they'll all step away and say, hey, Trump did, what I mean? They'll set him up and say, yeah, you got to do this. And if it goes to crap, they'll all walk out of the room and say, well, Trump made the decision, not me. They'll leave him hanging. And I think he gets that.
That happened with Iraq. And if you look at this mineral deal now on my stream on Sunday, we talked about this at length. This mineral deal, what little we can find out about it, it's not beneficial to Trump. You can tell he's not into it. He doesn't really care about the mineral deal. It has nothing in it is beneficial to Trump. You can read through it. No provisions are beneficial to Trump at all, nor his business interests. It opened the door to the private firms, i.e. Palantir, OpenAI, SpaceX, Anduril. The door is now wide open for all of those guys. The new military industrial complex, the new Lockheed Martins and the Boeings, because those guys are almost defunct and they're like dinosaurs now. So yes, I 100% agree. These deals are for them. They're not for Trump, and Trump would be much more apt to take deals. But the truth is that he can't. He's beholden to Miriam Adelson, who has tons of money in Ukraine as well as China, and he's beholden to the tech bros that I mentioned, the tech bro class. We call them the PayPal mafia, if you will. He's beholden to them even more so than the Adelsons, and they're interested in just pushing their AI as far as it can go and developing crypto cloud states and stuff. So he is beholden to a lot of scary people. I'm not sure that he knew the extent of that. Because I obviously don't believe that Trump is like, yes, you know what, go in there and like raid the country for whatever and get your AI. And he doesn't know what's all of that's going on the back end, but he's beholden to these people.
I'm reading the ceasefire agreement between the United States and the authorities in Sana'a seems to achieve the de-escalation. Apparently, they've agreed not to target each other.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
what does that mean?
Apparently, let's see, Ansar Allah's political bureau, Trump is not telling the truth, and no official from Sana'a or Ansar Allah has contacted or written to him. Oh, what a shock. We've also got, so apparently, Oman is saying there's a deal. Oman is saying they won't target each other or something, like they won't shoot at each other. And it sounds to me like there's some kind of, we won't bomb you and you don't shoot at American ships. Well, the only reason they're shooting at American ships is because you're bombing them. Get the American ships the hell out. So it's probably, if you get the hell out of the Red Sea, we won't shoot at you. And then, okay, if you don't shoot at us, we won't bomb you. We're exiting. It doesn't sound like there's much of anything else. So there's no deal related. I'll put it like this. It doesn't sound like the Yemen has decided to open the Red Sea or stop firing at Israel, which is what we were supposed to make happen. We're supposed to reopen the Red Sea, right, and they're not allowed to shoot at Israel anymore. And it sounds like we got a deal that basically said, we won't bomb you if you don't shoot our ships.
We're leaving.
In other words, which kind of all we had to do was leave, because if our ships are not there, they can't shoot at them. And they're not close enough to bomb them. So, hey, so it sounds like Trump just got the hell out. That's what it sounds like to me. Let's see. In the Omani foreign ministry, in the future, neither the United States nor the authorities in Sana'a will target the other. So I guess we're just taking our ships out of the area and they won't have to get shot at. Might I add, I support that. Yeah. I support that move.
Please move the ships, Mr. Trump.
It just sounds like Trump said, hey, I want out. Let's boom, make a move.
Well, and, it's not hard to talk to the Yemeni armed forces. They're on Twitter all the time. One of them's on a space right now talking about it. So if you need to get a hold of them, just go to Twitter. They're always there.
Yeah, exactly. You could go on and you could just inbox them. You know what I mean?
Literally.
You send them a message. Hey, we're leaving. Okay, then you'll probably be out of range, so we won't be able to shoot at you. Bye. And then they just announced a deal. At any rate, there was something else I wanted to ask you about.
Somebody asked me if I'm Trotskyite. Trotskyite? No. Why would we be Trotskyite?
You get all kinds of people in the chat. We get great.
Someone said I'm using hyper liberal language. Like, you are a snowflake. You need to relax.
What's hyper liberal language?
No, because I called them tech bros.
I know a lot of, in fact, like my buddies over on Rumble, Poikin and the Last American Vagabond, all of those guys, those guys, they're more, what would you call them? Kind of anarchist kind of guys, whatever you want to call it. And they call them the tech bros. They call them the PayPal mafia.
I don't know what you want me to call them.
I've been called them the tech bros. You know what I mean?
I thought tech bros was like not offensive. I didn't want to be like offensive and be like the PayPal mafia or like the evil empire. Like, I don't know what else.
Next, I guess we're going to have to check their pronouns or something to make sure we don't.
Let me know your pronouns in the chat.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And everybody in the chat, make sure you wear a mask too, because
Yes.
we won't want anybody in the chat to be get measles or something like that. That's supposedly the deadly thing now, measles. What else? Oh, I know what it was. So I read something today that the Germans have been talking about how they can raise money, get more money to build this mighty army to take on the Russians. And of course, the UK, they're like, we're going to build, get money to build the mighty army to take on the Russians. And here's my thoughts. Yeah, Starmer or Mertz or whoever, it sounds good, right? But they literally have to cheat their own people in order just to stay in power. They're going to, it's like, we're going to build, you don't have any industry. I mean, the UK, how are they going to build a mighty army? They no longer have one steel plant. They don't have a single steel plant that they own in the UK. They're broke. They got no money. They got no credit. People are wandering the street, trying to eat each other like it's some kind of a zombie apocalypse. And they're going to build a mighty army. Yeah. I don't think the Russians are like, oh my God, the British army will be rebuilt and come take us. I don't think they're scared. To hear these people talk about this mighty army, the bad thing is they're lunatics. The good thing is they don't have the money. They don't have the industry. They do not have the political support to put together an army. Because if they built tanks and they said, all right, British people, we want we're going to put you in the army. We're going to put you in those tanks and off you go to the Russian border. It'd be like V for Vendetta. They'd burn the damn 10 Downing Street up and burn it to the ground. They wouldn't do it.
They did interviews on the street. They couldn't find one person that was like, yes, I will go fight for my country. Then again, they didn't really run into very many British people, but that's another story. But yes, and somebody said, rule Britannia. Exactly. I don't know if they think like this is like the 1800s again or what. Maybe they're thinking more pragmatically. I mean, we tend to think in like short, like 20 to 50 year stints, while China's thinking in 100 to 500 year stints. Maybe Europe's thinking in a 100 to 200 year stint, because that's how long it would probably take, at least a few decades, for them to reindustrialize and then to get the demographic and to change the stigma associated with serving in their armed forces. I mean, it's the same thing for us. So, I mean, these places have such internal societal collapse that even thinking about going into a war it's going to be the death of your country.
You make a good point, and that is, they're saying we're going in this direction. We're going up. We're going to build. We're going to have a great industry. We're going to have a great war machine. Then we're going to all the things that we need for a war machine, right? Okay, that implies you're getting stronger. But in reality, you're deteriorating. You know what I mean? You're falling, you're rotting away to nothing. And as you rot away to nothing, you're like doing all this big talk about how you're going to get tough. I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to lift weights and then I'm going to go fight the world champion. Yes. And you're like, dude, you're like 62 years old and you got a bad back and you know what I mean? Your hair's falling out. You're not going in the direction to become more athletic. You're going into the direction that, you're going to soon be pushing an aluminum walker around the house. You better be looking for, a housemaid to help you, mush your oatmeal in the morning, because you're not going to have any teeth. And you're like, we're going to get tougher and stronger. And then we're going to fight.
Well, that's that backslide of liberalism. These liberals, like true liberalism, not what people say in America is liberalism, will backslide into fascism or backslide into totalitarianism as it starts to lose its grip on the masses. And that's what you're seeing. You mentioned it in the beginning of our talk about how like fascistic they're getting with censorship in Europe. And that's good news and bad news. It's bad news because we got to suffer through the censorship, but it's good news because it's a sign that they're losing power and they're getting more irrational. This is irrational talk. We're going to build an army that's willing to take on, not even willing, it's able to take on Russia and not get steamrolled. That's not going to happen in the next 50 years. So it's just more irrational crap, just nonsensical talk.
And all the talk you're doing, and the only thing these, whatever you want to call them, the so-called liberal fascists, I call them the ultra liberal fascists, right? The only thing they're really doing For all the talk about their big plans, they're struggling to hold on to power. The only thing they're really focusing on now is struggling to maintain their grip on power. How are we going to stop Romania? Georgescu, he's going to get, oh my God, wait a minute. How are we going to stop the AFD? They're rising. Not that AFD is just the end all. I'm just saying these various parties that are not aligned with the with the Atlanticists or whatever you want to call them, right? So as they talk about these great plans they have, the only thing I actually see them doing is struggling to hold political power. And that's getting harder and harder for them to do. So how are you going to transform your whole society when your whole society is saying we want a new direction, and you're like, no, you're not going to get a new direction, and we'll cheat any way we can to stop you from getting political power, and B, we're going to drag you into war, and then you're all going to die in a war.
They're going to have a mutiny. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I've said for a long time, I think it's going to get bloody. I think in Europe, there will be violence as their standard of living deteriorates so bad. They will really get pissed when they wake up one day and they say, what the hell? And they look around Europe and there ain't a schnitzel or what else do they love? Or a baguette to be found. They'll be like, oh my God. And then, the Macrons and people of the world will still be standing there shaking their fist about marching into Moscow. And they're going to be like, dude, I'm German and I can't get a schnitzel. They're going to be pissed. Somebody's
they
going
don't know
down.
how we live. They have no idea that's even a possibility. These people have no idea how regular people, day-to-day people, normal people live. So yes, they're under this illusion that like we'll survive. And it's like, we're kind of just barely hanging on here, guy. So really interesting. And I think that you mentioned it earlier about, well, now I just lost my train of thought. Never mind.
Oh, well, that being said.
Oh, the
okay.
AFD. Yeah, AFD
Yes.
and Romania. So that somebody mentioned it in the chat. AFD is not fascist. Maybe you have a case to make for Georgescu, who's not running anyway. But the AFD being banned is a terrible sign for things to come in Germany. And I'm not going to do the whole moral whatever and virtue signal. Oh, it's the Nazis' return. It's actually it kind of is, and it's kind of the opposite. It's like this weird, hyper vigilant, neoliberal, reactionary sort of action to ban these parties as these liberal politicians backslide into totalitarianism.
Well, here's the great contradiction. The Greens, the SPD, whoever the hell all of these other groups, this coalition, so-called centrist government in Germany is calling the AFD fascist, right? Meanwhile, they're aligned with a bunch of guys in Kiev whom they can't, when they show pictures of the soldiers in the Ukrainian army in Germany, they have to blur out the patches on their uniforms because if they didn't, it would be a literal violation of law in Germany. So you're saying that guy's a fascist. Why? Because he doesn't want to send money and weapons to whole Adolf over there, who's walking around adorned with the iconography of the Fourth Reich all over his uniform. So the fascist is the guy who doesn't want to support the guy with the swastikas now in Germany. That's the contradiction that we see of these lunatics.
We're fighting for democracy and our values in Ukraine. Okay, so
I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting values.
Meanwhile, they're trashing the Victory Day parade. So just keep that in mind. And they're trying to stop the leaders from getting there. So they're preventing a fascist takeover in Germany by banning the AFD, but they're also upset with Russia for celebrating the victory over fascism. That's how they tie themselves in these knots.
Yes. And I don't know if you've been following the Ibrahim Traore.
I love him.
Thing. Yeah, he's going to be at the May 9th parade. And it's great because what we're representing now is that the Africans are like, screw you, French. We're sick and tired of you stinking Western Europeans robbing us blind. We're going on about our way. We're friends with Russia and China. You know, every time I looked these unbelievably huge protests in Ouagadougou. Is that the
I don't know how to say it either.
I think it's Ouagadougou is the
I like that.
capital of Burkina Faso, but they got Burkina Faso flags,
Mali,
and
Russia,
Russian flags.
and
Boy,
Nigeria.
I know that just pisses the Western Europeans off so bad. Kick the French out and then show Russian flags.
Yep. We actually sent a pallet of Russian flags to Africa once for that reason. But yes, big things coming out of the Sahel with Ibrahim Traore. He is going to the May 9th celebration along with the presidents of Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Equatorial Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau, and Zimbabwe, and Egypt, I believe. So a lot of African leaders. But Ibrahim Traore is really spearheading a lot of movement in the Sahel and Western Africa in general. He helped form the Sahel Alliance, taking them out of ECOWAS, which was, for our listeners that don't know, it was basically the African NATO, which really served no purpose whatsoever, other than to give Nigeria more power. So they formed their own alliance and they're working together. And he just refused. I forget what the investment was for, what they were trying to build. And he refused it and said, I don't want money for that. I want money for schools, hospitals, and homes. And they were like, whoa. So I expect maybe some freedom and democracy to come to Burkina Faso, or at least attempt to come to Burkina Faso.
Yeah, it's great. He is a great. What's happening now is this, and sometimes you need this. He's a symbolic leader for all of Africa, not just Burkina Faso, because of the position of defiance that he takes against the the colonial powers, because and in a way, and I'm certainly, but I'll put it like this: in the same way that every time the liberals would try to charge Trump with a crime, or church, go, he's a Russian stooge or whatever. Every time they did that, there was an element to it that a lot of people in America was like, wow, the system hates him and I hate the system. He must be okay. So Trump took on a symbolism of his own, in no way related to who Trump really was, but it was created by the system going after him and him appearing to be defiant against the system, right? There's a great symbolism there. And Ibrahim, not that Traore's Trump, whole different thing, but my point being is the concept of a symbolic leader that Africa needed. After being, backstabbed by so many colonial puppets. But for a guy to come out and just stand up, and he's a young guy, he wears his beret and his uniform, and he's strong looking, and he stands tall. Great. You know what I mean? And he's there, and he's, nope, I ain't giving an inch, right? And there's a great symbolism for that. It's, let me say this. In the same way that I think President Xi represents standing up against he represents, here's what I'm saying. President Xi represents standing up against the century of humiliation for China. President Putin represents standing up against these neoliberal lunatic fascists who says we're going to take Russia. He's not just a great leader. He's symbolic of a leader who's an intellectual and philosophical leader, but he ain't giving an inch, and he'll fight if he has to, right? Exactly. I think Traore is the symbol that Africa needs.
I agree 100%.
A symbol of defiance.
And he was really gutsy too, very outgoing, and even from the beginning. And I mean, the people there love him. The media went crazy. They called him the next Thomas Sankara, which is huge. He was beloved and still is in Burkina Faso. So to compare him to that, to Sankara is huge. That'd be like comparing somebody to George Washington.
Exactly.
So very, very major. He was one of the first to open the door to Russia, and the military deals with Russia really got involved with that. So yes, I'm really excited to see. I'm happy that he's still in power. Was the youngest president to take power at the time. Just really, really great story. And then the same thing happened in Niger and Mali and Senegal, and there was we have a little bit of a wave. So we'll see what happens. Africa's very hopeful.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, tell everybody where they can find you online, where they can follow you on social media and YouTube and all that stuff.
Guys, please do me a favor and interact with our Twitter, the DD_Geopolitics. We are so shadow banned. It's not even funny. But other than that, you can just check us out on ddgeopolitics.com. We stream every Sunday, 12 Pacific.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. All right, everybody. So that's Sarah, and we look forward to having her back. We have just a fun time where we hit a lot of subjects. And Sarah, I hope you'll come back and hang out with us again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Here's what is very, very important. You guys are the people who make this who make this happen. So make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. And follow DD. Somebody said, what does DD stand for? Well, it stands for Donbass Devushka. And that's who she was on Telegram and other things. She was Donbass Devushka. And then the media went after her and attacked her as being a Putin bot. She's a former Navy person, and they went after her. And she just came out and said, okay, yes, I'm pro-Russian. So what? And I think she has her history or something goes back to the Donbass, her ancestry or whatever. And yes, there we go, Donbass Devushka. Look it up. And they wrote articles about her, and they attacked her, and a lot of people followed her, and they demonetized their YouTube channel. So they're streaming. They got a YouTube channel. She's got a great Telegram channel. Make sure you follow her. And Sarah's, as you can see, she's great. I love Sarah. She's really awesome. Great person. Very, very smart. And so from now on, I'm going to contact her, and we need to get Sarah on here every week and hang out with her and pick her brain a little bit. She's really, really sharp. And apparently she's got a puppy. Hey, she loves puppies. You gotta like a person who loves puppies. But make sure you follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble, follow me on Instagram. And of course, if you can afford it, whether it's PayPal, the PayPal Mafia, oh my God, buy me a coffee, Cash App, whatever the case may be, Patreon, you can see my Patreon information. If you can afford to, contribute to the channel. And if you can, it doesn't matter. Everybody, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.